The Manual of Epictetus, from Epictetus, the Discourses and Manual, together with fragments of his writings, by P. E. Matheson, published in 1916 by Oxford at the Clarendon Press. Read by Steve Carafit.
Welcome to the Sunday Stoic Podcast. This is Steve coming to you from Conway, Arkansas. And this week we have one of my favorite readings from the Enchiridion, chapter 46. In it, Epictetus discusses the importance of living your philosophy rather than talking about it, especially when you're first learning the philosophy. And all of us are still in those beginning phases, even if we've been doing it for a few years. If we blather on about it without living up to what we're saying, we are going to look like hypocrites. We're going to look like fools. On the other hand, if people are impressed with our character, if they're impressed with our actions, they may want to know what our secret is. Where do we get this ability to handle situations? Where do we get this good character from? And perhaps at that point, we can hand them the meditations or the Enchiridion. But not before then. Not until we can demonstrate our character that has been molded through the practice of Stoic philosophy.
Chapter 46.
On no occasion call yourself a philosopher, nor talk at large of your principles among the multitude, but act on your principles. For instance, at a banquet, do not say how one ought to eat, but eat as you ought. Remember that Socrates had so completely got rid of the thought of display that when men came and wanted an introduction to philosophers, he took them to be introduced. So patient of neglect was he. And if a discussion arise among the multitude on some principle, keep silent for the most part, for you are in great danger of blurting out some undigested thought. And when someone says to you, "You know nothing," and you do not let it provoke you, then know that you are really on the right road. For sheep do not bring grass to their shepherds and show them how much they have eaten, but they digest their fodder and then produce it in the form of wool and milk. Do the same yourself. Instead of displaying your principles to the multitude, show them the results of the principles you have digested.
Could you imagine being in ancient Athens and you're like, hey, excuse me, master, I'm looking for a philosopher? And this guy's like, oh, yeah, I'll help you out. There's a guy right down there. He's a pretty good philosopher. And then later on you found out that you were talking to Socrates. Socrates wasn't like, well, I happen to be a philosopher myself. Instead, he's like, oh, I'll help you find somebody. Sure, come on, let's go. So that's an interesting way of being, isn't it? Very different than our social media ego-fested selves that we are today. Everything's a festival of our own ego, and Socrates acting quite different there than we would act today, probably. But let's look at what Epictetus is telling us to do here. So we are learning philosophy, and we're pretty excited about it. We think it's working really well. But unlike perhaps certain sects of, let's say, Christianity, where you're told to get out there and start bringing people into the fold, right? You're supposed to go out and preach the good word. He says, don't do that. Make people come to you because of your great actions. This is a philosophy about living life on this earth between birth and death and doing the best we can. And part of that is actually putting our principles into action. And then if those actions are good and admirable, then other people will start to live the way we live. So we have to be careful not to get into arguments, not to call ourselves philosophers too early in our careers here. Don't go, I'm a philosopher. Okay, buddy. And then you're just going to get quizzed, or people are going to think you're a weirdo. And like I said, you're going to get quizzed probably by someone who's a PhD in philosophy, and you'll end up looking like you don't know anything because your definition of a philosopher and theirs probably are not the same. So it's best to, for the most part, keep it quiet, live well, put your principles into action, and lead by example rather than leading from the pulpit. So the example here, I've used it a lot. The visual here that Epictetus paints to me is very powerful. So you have all these sheep in a field. Sheep in a field are out grazing, and the shepherd is kind of keeping an eye on them. The sheep return to the shepherd, and he's like, I sure do hope you all have eaten enough today. So all the sheep go, bleh, and vomit up the grass at his feet to show him what they've done. Well, that's not going to do anyone any good, right? It's like, hey, look what I can do. I know this. I know that. I read this book. I can do this. I'm a philosopher. That's like vomiting up the grass that the sheep have eaten. Instead, Epictetus says the sheep should digest the grass and use it to grow wool. Put their food into action, their nutrition into action in this case. Just as you should put your stoicism into action, into practice, to draw folks to you perhaps. This isn't indifferent, of course, but by your actions. People may say, wow, that's impressive. Even if no one gives a damn. Stoicism gives us the ability to say, well, that's okay. I did my best. So don't get out a bullhorn and go, hey, everybody, I am a Stoic. That's not what we're trying to do here, despite what I'm doing right now with this microphone. What we are trying to do is to transform ourselves. But bear in mind, this transformation of ourselves must be used in the world. It's not just for making ourselves better able to cope with stress, or making ourselves more money, or making ourselves a little less angry. Those are important steps to being a better agent in the world, but we are supposed to be agents in the greater cosmopolis. Working on ourselves each and every day is important. Just as sharpening a knife is important if you're going to use a knife. But bear in mind, if you just take a knife out of the drawer every day and sharpen it and put it back, it's no good to anyone, and eventually your knife will be useless because there will be nothing left. Just as if you only focus on your Stoic practices every day, but do not put them into action, soon you will be out of time. You might have great coping skills, and you may know philosophy in and out, but you never utilized it for anything. You had a sharp knife in a drawer that's now nothing but a nub. Use it. Put it into practice. Just don't brag about it. And while you're at it, may I suggest you seize the day. Carpe diem.
Thank you for listening to the Sunday Stoic. Become a member of the Sunday Stoic team. Earn rewards by becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/SundayStoic. Contact the show by emailing sundaystoic@gmail.com. And as Steve always says, Carpe diem.
Bye.